The fluorescent lights in Eliza Warren's cell flickered, casting momentary shadows across the concrete floor. She traced her finger along the tally marks etched into the wall beside her bed. 32 days down, 28 years and 333 days to go. The numbers made her dizzy. 29 years seemed both impossibly distant and suffocatingly immediate. "Breakfast, Warren," a guard announced, sliding a tray through the slot in her door. Eliza didn't move from her bunk. The same oatmeal, the same plastic spoon, the same routine. In her former life, she would have ordered delivery, scrolled through Instagram while sipping a latte from the cafe below her apartment. Correction, not her apartment, Rebecca's apartment, Rebecca's life. Rebecca Taylor had everything Eliza wanted. The career at Vogue, the Soho loft, the influential social circle, the boyfriend who looked like he belonged on billboards. They'd been friends since college, roommates for 2 years after graduation. While Rebecca's career soared, Eliza drifted between temp jobs and failed interviews. Rebecca tried to help, offering contacts and references, but each time Eliza watched. Her friend shined brighter, resentment grew like a shadow within her. "You need to eat," the guard insisted. Eliza finally rose, collecting the tray mechanically. She didn't recognize herself anymore, not physically, not mentally. The woman who had lived in New York City, who had dreamed of bylines and fashion, spreads, seemed like a character from a book she'd once read. The therapist she was required to see weekly kept asking her to recount what happened. "Start from the beginning," Dr. Wyatt would say, peering over her glasses. "Help me understand." The beginning. When had it begun? Was it the night of Rebecca's promotion party, when Eliza stood in the bathroom of an exclusive Manhattan restaurant, staring at her reflection while Rebecca's laughter echoed from the private dining room? Or was it earlier, when they were 18, and Rebecca was accepted to their dream school, while Eliza settled for her safety option? Perhaps it was the day Rebecca met Jason, her perfect boyfriend, at a gallery opening Eliza wasn't invited to, or when Rebecca casually mentioned purchasing her apartment, an apartment Eliza couldn't afford to rent, let alone buy. The spiral had been gradual, then suddenly steep. Eliza returned to her bunk with the tray, forcing herself to eat. The oatmeal tasted like dust. Everything tasted like dust now. She had access to Rebecca's life for exactly 11 days. 11 days of living in that Soho apartment, wearing Rebecca's clothes, using her skincare products. 11 days of responding to emails as Rebecca, attending meetings as Rebecca, sleeping in Rebecca's bed. 11 perfect days before everything crumbled. Rebecca was supposed to be in Paris for 2 weeks. A work trip, another enviable assignment. She'd asked Eliza to water her plants, a request that came with apartment keys and door codes. What Rebecca didn't anticipate was Eliza, studying her passwords, observing the patterns to her life, planning meticulously for months. She didn't anticipate Eliza sending an email from her account to her boss, explaining a family emergency requiring her immediate return from Paris. She didn't anticipate Eliza cutting and dyeing her hair to match Rebecca's signature bob, practicing her handwriting, her laugh, her walk. For those 11 days, Eliza felt alive. She felt seen. People respected her. No, they respected Rebecca. The barista knew her order. Colleagues valued her input. Jason texted constantly, his messages becoming increasingly concerned when Rebecca seemed different, distracted. On the 12th day, the real Rebecca returned from Paris. "Exercise yard, Warren," the same guard announced, interrupting Eliza's thoughts. Outside, the spring air felt sharp in her lungs. The exercise yard at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility wasn't much. Just a concrete rectangle with high fences topped with razor wire. But it was the closest thing to freedom Eliza experienced now. Other inmates clustered in groups, but Eliza kept to herself, circling the perimeter alone. Some of the women had formed friendships, alliances. Eliza couldn't bring herself to connect. What would she say? "I'm here because I wanted to be someone else so badly that I broke into my best friend's life." No one would understand how it felt to live permanently in another person's shadow. How Rebecca had everything handed to her while Eliza struggled for scraps. How easy it had been in that moment of desperation to step across the line. "You've got mail," the guard informed her when she returned inside. Eliza's heart skipped. Mail meant someone outside these walls remembered she existed. It was rarely good news. Her parents had disowned her after the trial. Most friends had disappeared, but any connection to the outside world felt precious. The envelope bore her mother's handwriting. Eliza's fingers trembled as she opened it, her first communication from family in months. Inside was a newspaper clipping. No note, no explanation, just a glossy magazine page torn from Vogue. Rebecca. Taylor's byline caught her eye immediately, beneath the headline, "Rising from Trauma, Finding Strength After Betrayal." There was a photo. Rebecca, beautiful as ever, standing confidently outside the rebuilt entrance to her apartment building. The same building where police had found Eliza 11 days into her charade, wearing Rebecca's clothes, using Rebecca's laptop, living Rebecca's life. The article didn't mention Eliza by name, referring to her only as "my former friend" and "my attacker." The clinical language made Eliza flinch. She hadn't meant to attack Rebecca. That wasn't part of the plan. But when Rebecca appeared unexpectedly in the doorway, confusion turning to horror on her face, something in Eliza had snapped. The paperweight had been heavy in her hand. Rebecca's blood, bright against the white marble floor. Eliza folded the clipping carefully, sliding it beneath her thin mattress with the others her mother had sent. Each article tracked Rebecca's recovery, her triumph, her resilience. Each one a reminder of what Eliza had done and failed to do. She had wanted Rebecca's perfect life so desperately. Now Rebecca had survived and thrived, while Eliza would spend the next 3 decades in this cell, haunted by her mistakes. "Therapy session in 10 minutes, the guard reminded her. Dr. Wyatt would want to discuss the clipping, would try to extract some expression of remorse or insight. Eliza would sit silently, knowing no words could possibly bridge the chasm between who she had been and who she had become. The clock on the wall ticked forward. Another minute gone. 28 years, 333 days, and approximately 7 hours remaining in her sentence. Dr. Wyatt's office was the only room in the facility that didn't scream prison. There were actual plants, framed diplomas, and a small window with a view of trees beyond the fence. The chair Eliza sat in wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't deliberately uncomfortable either. A small mercy. "You received another clipping," Dr. Wyatt observed, not really a question. Eliza nodded slightly. No point denying it. The guards reported everything. "Would you like to talk about how that makes you feel?" Eliza stared at her hands. The prison-issued moisturizer was inadequate, leaving her knuckles dry and cracked. Rebecca would never allow her hands to look like this. Rebecca had a special cream imported from France. "I feel," Eliza began, surprising herself by speaking, "I feel like I'm watching someone else's movie, like none of this is real." Dr. Wyatt leaned forward slightly. "This dissociation is a defense mechanism, but recovery starts with acceptance, Eliza. What am I supposed to accept? That I destroyed my life? That I nearly killed someone I loved because I was, what, jealous, crazy?" Eliza's voice cracked. "I don't even recognize the person who did those things." "Yet you did do those things," Dr. Wyatt said gently. "Understanding why is part of your rehabilitation." Rehabilitation, as if she could ever return to normal life, as if there was anything waiting for her when, if she completed her sentence. I want to take you back to something you mentioned in our last session, Dr. Wyatt continued. You said you felt invisible next to Rebecca. Can you elaborate? Eliza closed her eyes. Memories flooded in, sharp and painful. We met, freshman, year of college. Rebecca was my roommate. I'd never had a real friend before, and suddenly there she was, beautiful, confident, from a good family. She included me in everything. Her friends became my friends. Her interests became my interests. You adopted her identity even then, Dr. Wyatt noted. No, it wasn't like that, Eliza insisted. I admired her. We both wanted to work in fashion. We both moved to New York after graduation. But then, the therapist prompted. It was like watching parallel lives. Every door opened. For her, every door closed for me. Same education, same dreams, but she succeeded while I failed. Over and over again. Dr. Wyatt made a note. Did you ever consider that you might have different strengths, different paths? Eliza laughed bitterly. What was my path supposed to be? Watching her Instagram stories from my studio apartment in Queens while working retail, being invited to her fabulous parties as the childhood friend everyone pitied? Many people would consider having a place in New York and a steady job an achievement. You don't understand, Eliza whispered. It wasn't about the apartment or the job. It was about her having everything come easily. About feeling like no matter how hard I tried, I could never catch up. The session continued, circling the same territory they always covered. By the end, Eliza felt drained, her emotional resources depleted. Dr. Wyatt recommended journaling as if writing down her darkest thoughts would somehow make them less toxic. Back in her cell, Eliza found a letter waiting on her bunk. Unlike the newspaper clippings, this envelope bore handwriting she didn't recognize. The return address made her heart stop. Rebecca Taylor, followed by the Soho address Eliza knew intimately. Her hands trembled so violently she could barely open it. Inside was a single sheet of cream-colored stationery, Rebecca's personal letterhead, with her initials embossed in gold. Eliza. They told me not to contact you. My therapist, my lawyer, my parents, Jason, everyone says this is a mistake. Maybe they're right. But after my article was published, I realized I've been telling everyone's version of our story except yours. I'm not ready to forgive you. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. The scar on my temple reminds me every morning of what you did. The nightmares remind me every night. But before you were the person who tried to steal my life, you were my best friend for 10 years. I keep trying to reconcile these two versions of you, and I can't. I need to understand, not for your sake, but for mine. I need to know when my friend disappeared and this other person took her place. I've enclosed a visitor application. If you're willing to see me, fill it out. Eliza read the letter 7 times, then carefully folded it and placed it in the small box where she kept her few personal belongings. Rebecca wanted to see her. Rebecca, who should hate her completely, was reaching out. That night Eliza didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, remembering. There had been genuine friendship once, nights staying up late in their dorm room, sharing dreams and fears. The summer they backpacked through. Europe on a shoestring budget, Rebecca holding her hand at Eliza's father's funeral. The inside jokes, the comfort of someone who knew you completely. When had that friendship curdled into resentment? When had admiration twisted into envy? Perhaps it was the moment Rebecca was offered an internship at Vogue, the same internship Eliza had applied for and been rejected from. Or when Rebecca met Jason at a gallery opening featuring an artist Eliza had discovered first. Or when Rebecca's parents gave her the down payment for her apartment while Eliza's student loans accumulated. Interest. Little by little, Rebecca's successes had come to feel like Eliza's failures. Every advancement in Rebecca's life had been a reminder of what Eliza lacked. Until one day, the difference between appreciating Rebecca's life and coveting it had collapsed entirely. Morning came, and with it, routine. Breakfast, shower, work assignment in the prison library. Eliza moved through these motions mechanically, the visitor application burning a hole in her mind. Should she agree to see Rebecca? What purpose would it serve? Would Rebecca's real-life presence only sharpen the contrast between them? Rebecca, free and flourishing, Eliza caged and diminished. In the library, sorting donated books, Eliza found herself holding a fashion magazine, not Vogue, but one of its competitors. She flipped through it automatically, muscle memory from her previous life then froze on a familiar face. Jason, Rebecca's Jason, with his arm around a brunette woman. The caption identified her as designer Margot Ellis with boyfriend Jason Winters at charity gala. So Rebecca and Jason had split up. This information struck Eliza oddly. In her mind, Rebecca's life had continued exactly as before, perfect and unblemished, despite Eliza's violent intrusion. But of course, there had been consequences, ripple effects. Rebecca had been hurt, physically, emotionally. Perhaps Jason couldn't handle the aftermath. For the first time, Eliza wondered how else Rebecca's life had changed. The article mentioned rising from trauma, but what did that actually mean? Had Rebecca struggled to feel safe in her own home? Had she moved, changed careers, lost friends who couldn't deal with the messy reality of what had happened? Eliza had been so focused on what she had lost that she hadn't considered what Rebecca had lost. That evening she filled out the visitor application. Whatever Rebecca needed, closure, understanding, a chance to vent her anger, Eliza owed her that much. 2 weeks later, a guard informed her that her visitor had been approved. Rebecca Taylor would be coming on Saturday. Part 3. Saturday arrived with agonizing slowness. Eliza woke before dawn, her stomach knotted with anxiety. The visitation wasn't until 1 p.m., leaving her hours to dread and anticipate the encounter. She spent extra time preparing herself, washing her hair with the harsh prison shampoo, brushing it until it shone, applying the minimal cosmetics allowed by prison regulations. The face that looked back at her from the small metal mirror above her sink was a stranger's, pale, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. Prison had aged her, or perhaps it was guilt. "You've got a visitor, Warren," the guard announced at precisely 12:45, unlocking her cell. The walk to the visitation room felt like a march to execution. Eliza's legs trembled beneath her. What would she say to Rebecca? What could possibly make up for what she had done? The visitation room was divided by a plexiglass partition, with chairs and phones on either side. Some prisons allowed contact visits, but Bedford Hills required barriers for prisoners with violent offenses. Eliza was categorized as violent. The word still seemed wrong when applied to her, but the evidence was indisputable. Rebecca's blood on her hands, the paperweight clutched in her fingers when guards pulled her away. She sat in the hard plastic chair, wiping damp palms on her uniform pants. Through the glass, the door opened on the visitor's side. Rebecca entered, and Eliza's breath caught in her throat. She looked different. Her hair longer than the bob she'd worn for years, now falling in waves past her shoulders. She was thinner too, though she carried it well. Designer clothes as always. But it was the wariness in her eyes that struck Eliza most profoundly. Rebecca had never been wary before. She had moved through life with the unshakable confidence of someone who had never been truly hurt, until Eliza hurt her. Rebecca sat across from her, picking up the phone receiver on her side. Eliza mirrored the action with trembling fingers. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply looked at each other, separated by glass and consequences. "Your hair is different," Eliza finally said, immediately regretting the inanity of the comment. Rebecca touched her hair self-consciously. The doctors had to shave part of it, for the stitches. It finally grew back long enough to look intentional. Eliza flinched. Of course, the head wound she'd inflicted, 37 stitches according to the court documents. "I'm sorry," she whispered, knowing how inadequate the words were. "I didn't come for an apology," Rebecca replied, her voice steady. "I came for an explanation." Eliza swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can explain. I don't fully understand it myself." "Try." Rebecca's voice was firm but not unkind. "When did you start hating me, Eliza? We were friends, best friends. I trusted you with everything." "I didn't hate you," Eliza protested. I loved you. I admired you. I wanted to be you." The truth tumbled out, raw and ugly. "Your life seemed so perfect. Everything I wanted but couldn't have." "My life wasn't perfect," Rebecca countered. "You just decided it was." "You had everything. The career, the apartment, Jason." "Jason left me 3 months after the attack," Rebecca interrupted. "He said he couldn't handle the drama, as if being assaulted by my best friend was some reality TV plotline." Eliza was stunned into silence. "My perfect career. I was working 16-hour days, constantly afraid I'd be replaced by someone. Younger, thinner, more connected. That apartment you coveted, my parents helped with the down payment, yes, but I'm drowning in mortgage payments I can barely afford." Rebecca leaned closer to the glass. "You didn't want my actual life, Eliza. You wanted the Instagram version of it." The accusation struck like a physical blow. Was that true? Had she been so blinded by the glossy exterior that she hadn't seen the struggles beneath? "I felt invisible next to you," Eliza admitted, "like I was constantly playing catch-up in a race I couldn't win." "I never saw it as a competition," Rebecca said softly. "I thought we were supporting each other. When I recommended you for jobs, it wasn't charity. I genuinely thought you were talented." Eliza blinked back tears. "It never felt that way. It felt like pity." "That's on you, not me." Rebecca's tone hardened slightly. "You chose to interpret my actions that way." They fell silent again, the weight of years of misunderstanding hanging between them. "Do you remember our backpacking trip?" Rebecca asked suddenly. "After sophomore year?" Eliza nodded. 3 weeks in Europe, staying in hostels, navigating foreign cities with paper maps and broken language skills. They'd been absurdly happy despite the discomforts, missed trains, bedbugs, food poisoning in Prague. "You got us through that." Rebecca continued. "I was completely lost when my wallet was stolen in Barcelona. You were the one who figured it out, who spoke enough Spanish to file a police report, who managed our money so carefully that we could still complete the trip." "That was different," Eliza muttered. "No, it wasn't. You've always had strengths. Eliza, you just stopped seeing them. You became so fixated on what I had that you couldn't appreciate what you had." The truth of it pierced Eliza like a blade. When had she lost sight of herself so completely? When had coveting Rebecca's life become more important than building her own? "After what happened," Rebecca continued, "I had to move. I couldn't sleep in that apartment, knowing you had been there, pretending to be me, touching my things. I lost my sense of safety, my trust in people. I had panic attacks. I'm still having them." Eliza closed her eyes, unable to bear the pain. In Rebecca's expression, "But something else happened too," Rebecca added. "I started to see what really matters, not the job title or the address or the boyfriend. Just being alive, being myself." She pressed her palm against the glass. After a moment, Eliza matched the gesture from her side, their hands aligned but unable to touch. "I'm writing a book," Rebecca said, "about identity, friendship, betrayal, about us." Eliza's eyes widened. "About us?" not using real names. But yes, exploring how something like this happens, how a friendship can twist into something destructive. My therapist thinks it's part of my healing process. And is it healing you? Rebecca considered the question. I think so. That's partly why I wanted to see you, to make sure I'm telling the truth, not just my version of it. The idea that Rebecca was still thinking of fairness, of truth, even after everything, made Eliza's chest ache with a complex mixture of admiration and shame. There's something else, Rebecca continued. The police found your journals when they searched your apartment. I read them during the trial preparation. Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. Those journals contained her darkest thoughts, her growing obsession with Rebecca's life, the detailed plans for inserting herself into it. You're a good writer, Eliza. Better than me, honestly. You always were. What? In college, I used to rewrite my essays after reading yours. Your way with words, with images. It's a gift. A gift you abandoned to pursue a path that was right. For me, but maybe not for you. Eliza felt dizzy. Could that be true? Had she been so busy envying Rebecca's path that she'd ignored her own strengths, her own possibilities? Have you been writing here? Rebecca asked. In prison. Eliza shook her head. Just the journals Dr. Wyatt makes me keep. You should be writing, real writing, your story, other stories. It's what you're meant to do. A guard approached, signaling that their time was nearly up. Rebecca glanced at him, then back at Eliza. I can't forgive you yet, she said. Maybe never completely, but I'm trying to understand, and I think you need to understand too, not just what you did to me, but what you did to yourself. Eliza nodded, tears streaming down her face now. I might come back, Rebecca said, if that's okay. Yes, Eliza whispered. Please. As Rebecca stood to leave, she paused. That life you thought was so perfect? I'm rebuilding something different now, something real. I hope you can do the same, even here. Long after Rebecca had gone, Eliza sat motionless, her mind racing with revelations. The comfortable narrative she'd constructed of Rebecca's charmed life versus her own doomed struggle had been shattered. Reality was more complex, more nuanced than the story she'd told herself for years. That night, Eliza asked the guard for extra paper. She began to write, not about Rebecca, but about herself, about the girl she had been before envy consumed her, about the woman she might still become, even with 28 years stretching before her. It was a small beginning, a single page of truth in a history of self-deception. But as she wrote deep into the night, Eliza felt something unfamiliar, stirring within her. Not hope exactly, but possibility, the possibility of reclaiming herself from the wreckage of her mistakes. 6 months passed. Eliza filled notebook after notebook with words, memories, reflections, fictional stories that helped her escape the confines of her cell. Dr. Wyatt noted the change in her demeanor, the way she engaged more fully in therapy sessions, no longer hiding behind silence and dissociation. Writing suits you, the therapist observed during one session. It's giving you perspective. Eliza nodded. I'm trying to untangle the truth from the stories I told myself for so long. And what have you discovered? She considered the question carefully. That I was so busy wanting someone else's life that I never built my own. That envy is like a funhouse mirror. It distorts everything you see through it. That's insightful, Eliza. Rebecca visited again last week, Eliza said, changing the subject slightly. She brought me books. She said her editor is interested in her manuscript. This had become their new rhythm, Rebecca visiting monthly, bringing books, sharing updates about her life outside, not rekindling friendship exactly, but forging something new from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. During these visits, Eliza learned the details of what had happened after her arrest, how Rebecca had been found by the building's doorman who heard her screams, how she'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital with a severe concussion and skull fracture, how the media had swarmed around the story, fashion editor attacked by identity-obsessed friend, turning their personal tragedy into tabloid fodder. Slowly, Rebecca had rebuilt her life. She'd moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood, left Vogue for a smaller publication that allowed her more creative freedom, started therapy, taken self-defense classes, adopted a rescue dog named Brinkley who sensed her panic attacks before they happened. Her book is partly about me, Eliza told Dr. Wyatt. Not directly, she's fictionalized it, but it explores how someone can become so consumed by comparison that they lose themselves. How does that make you feel? The therapist asked. Exposed. Understood. Eliza paused. Relieved in a way, like someone is finally seeing the real me, even the darkest parts. You could write your own story, you know, Dr. Wyatt suggested. Not for publication necessarily, but for yourself. The idea had occurred to Eliza already. Her notebooks contained fragments, scenes from her childhood, the early days with Rebecca, the slow poisoning of their friendship through her own toxic envy. But stringing these together into a coherent narrative felt daunting. It would mean confronting the fullness of her culpability. That evening, Eliza received a package. Prison regulations meant it had been thoroughly inspected before reaching her, but the contents were intact. A leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover, a set of decent pens, and a note from Rebecca. This is a better canvas for your writing than those composition notebooks. I read the pages you shared with me last time. You have a gift, Eliza. Don't waste it, even here, especially here. Eliza ran her fingers over the journal's smooth cover. Rebecca had listened when she complained about the flimsy prison-issued notebooks, how the pages tore easily and the bindings broke. This journal was sturdy, built to last, like the foundation of a new identity she was trying to construct. She opened to the first blank page and began to write, addressing the words to her younger self. Dear Eliza at 18. You're about to meet a girl named Rebecca Taylor. She will become your best friend, and later, the symbol of everything you think you failed to achieve. Years from now, you will commit an unforgivable act because you believe her life should be yours. I'm writing to you from a prison cell, where I'll spend my 30s and 40s paying for that mistake. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing to tell you to look at yourself, really look, before it's too late. See your own gifts, your own path. Stop measuring your worth against someone else's journey. The words flowed easily now, wisdom painfully acquired, but freely given to the girl she once was. Eliza wrote late into the night, the sounds of the prison, doors clanging, voices, calling out, guards patrolling, fading into the background as she lost herself in the act of creation. The following week brought another visit from Rebecca. She looked well, her hair now styled in a chic, asymmetrical cut that concealed the scar at her temple, her eyes clearer than during her first visit 6 months earlier. I brought you something else, Rebecca said, once they were seated at the visitation booth. She held up a printout. My editor wants to include a chapter from your perspective, with your permission, of course. Eliza blinked in surprise. My perspective? Those pages you shared with me last time about how the envy started, how it felt to be constantly comparing yourself to me. It's powerful, Eliza. It helps explain what happened without excusing it. I don't know, Eliza hesitated. People will hate me. Some will, Rebecca acknowledged. Others might recognize themselves in you, the dangerous slope of comparison, how it can consume you if you let it. Your writing could be a warning, a lesson. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating, to have her words read beyond these walls, to contribute something meaningful despite her circumstances. "I'd need to rewrite it," Eliza said slowly. "Make it better." Rebecca smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "That's what writers do." They spent the rest of the visit discussing the project, talking like collaborators rather than victim and perpetrator. It was the most normal Eliza had felt in years, focusing on something productive, something that might matter to someone beyond herself. After Rebecca left, Eliza returned to her cell with a new sense of purpose. The guard who escorted her, Officer Mendez, who had been cold to her since her arrival, gave her an appraising look. "Your visitor comes regularly," she observed. "Not many inmates get that kind of loyalty after what you did." "I don't deserve it," Eliza admitted. "No, Officer," Mendez agreed bluntly. "But maybe you can earn it. I see you writing all the time. What are you writing about?" "Mistakes, consequences, how to live with both." The officer nodded, something like respect flickering across her face. "Good. Keep doing that." Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Eliza's writing grew stronger, more honest. She worked on the chapter for Rebecca's book, revising it countless times until each word felt true. She shared pieces with Dr. Wyatt, who encouraged her to explore writing. Programs available to inmates. "Bedford Hills has a college program," the therapist mentioned, "including creative writing courses. You could apply." The possibility of formal education, of developing her skills even while incarcerated, opened another door in Eliza's mind. Not freedom, never that, not for decades, but a different kind of liberation. The freedom to create, to contribute, to become someone other than the woman who had tried to steal another's identity. 1 year after her first visit, Rebecca arrived with news. "The book is being published in the spring," she announced. "Your chapter is the heart of it, according to my editor." Eliza felt a complicated surge of emotion, pride mingled with lingering shame. "Have you decided on a title?" "Reflections," Rebecca said, "because it's about seeing yourself clearly and about how we mirror each other, for better or worse." They talked about the publishing process, about Rebecca's book tour plans, about the college course Eliza had enrolled in. As their time wound down, Rebecca grew serious. "My therapist asked me recently if I've forgiven you," she said quietly. Eliza's heart stuttered. "What did you say?" "I said forgiveness isn't a destination, it's a process." Rebecca pressed, her palm against the glass. "Their ritual now. I'm still angry sometimes. I still have nightmares, but I see you working to understand what happened, to become someone different. That matters to me." Eliza matched her gesture, hand against hand, with impenetrable barrier between them. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad I didn't succeed, not just because of what it would have done to you, but because of what it would have done to me. Living a stolen life, it would have been hollow." "Find your own life, Eliza," Rebecca said, "even here, especially here." That night, Eliza stood at the small window of her cell, looking up at the sliver of sky visible between buildings. 27 years and 6 months remained of her sentence, an eternity, a lifetime. Yet for the first time, she could glimpse possibilities within those years, not freedom, but purpose, not happiness exactly, but meaning. She had wanted Rebecca's life so desperately that she had nearly destroyed them both. Now she understood that the only life worth living was her own, circumscribed by concrete and consequences, but hers nonetheless. She returned to her bunk and opened the leather journal. The blank page waited, patient and non-judgmental. Eliza began to write, not about the past this time, but about the future, a future contained within these walls, but expanding in her mind. A future where she created rather than coveted, where she built meaning from the wreckage of her mistakes. It wasn't redemption, some things couldn't be redeemed, but it was something close to peace, the quiet acknowledgement that while she couldn't change what she had done. She could still choose what she would become. Outside her window, the moon climbed higher, casting silver light through the bars. Eliza wrote until dawn, filling pages with the story she was still living, the one that had begun with envy and violence, but might yet end with creation and truth.